So many folks say that the occupation is a necessary evil. That's another myth that you sometimes encounter, that there is Palestinian aggression and it needs to be contained. And I would say it is true that there is Palestinian aggression. The way I would understand, and this comes from my sort of faith foundation as well as my identification as a member of the human race, I think I would say a better way of thinking about Palestinian aggression is what systems are in place that engender it. In what ways are the practices of the Israeli occupation stoking the aggression? I heard a Jewish Israeli, another one, speak on this topic, and he said, really, the question for us is, what can we do to take away any motivation for Palestinian aggression toward us? It's a different way of framing the question, right? But there's another myth. I want to bring up a specific topic, which is the separation wall. That is, that really makes life hell for the Palestinians. Not all of them, but for those who have jobs in Jerusalem and need to get through. And while it was a short time we were in Bethlehem, the wall was closed several times. Even when the Pope was coming, the Pope was getting ready to come when we were leaving. And so if you were Palestinian, you couldn't get in and out of the separation wall. Of course, if you were American, you had a free ticket. You could go right through, no problems. So when people, so I think many Israelis would say the separation wall is not a good thing, but it's necessary to protect us because suicide bombings have gone down. But if you actually look into the history and to if you sort of map the suicide bombings onto a timeline, what you find out is that the suicide bombings happened long before much of the wall was finished. And it's not even finished now. So there are places, my brother did an overnight stay outside of Bethlehem where the wall is not yet complete, where you could just walk right into Israel. So if there were folks who were motivated to go into Israel and on a suicide bombing mission, they could get there. Another Jewish Israeli friend said, actually Palestinians do get in for work, especially when the checkpoints are closed. They have ways of getting around. They have to be very determined. They sometimes get stopped and sent back, but they do. And so if they're getting in to really support their families, if there were suicide bombers who wanted to, they sure could, right? So I think the way in which this notion of protecting Israel from Palestinian aggression has been spun both doesn't take any ownership for the systems that cultivate the aggression. And here, I want to kind of refer back to the prophetic tradition in the Hebrew Bible and Jewish scripture, where the prophets are so amazing because when they look at and in general take stock of what has happened to the Jewish people, for instance, in the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE, they say, what went wrong? And they really look inward and they say, what have we done that has been corrosive within our life together as God's people that has led in this direction? And I think while I think there's some danger in a victim, assigning blame to the victim's self. I think that you have to be careful about that. I do think that in the case of Israel, a really helpful security strategy would be to say, what are the things that we are doing that stoke this hostility and this aggression?